Just quickly before I move to long-term strategic direction, I want to add to what PS mentioned on the short-term in terms of the other ongoing interventions. We have activities also to complement on water tracking. We know as drought bites, the frequency of motorized boreholes in terms of breakdowns increases. So the government has also supported the repair and maintenance of the water facilities alongside the water tracking, just to support. Provision of fuel subsidy to the boreholes, the motorized boreholes. We know access to fuel becomes an issue as drought bites for the local communities, so provision of fuel subsidy has also been there. In terms of long-term strategies, one of the issues we are looking at in terms of long-term strategy is actually development of climate-proof infrastructure. One of it is actually water. We know lack of moisture and the precipitation, if I may say, leads to water shortage. And we know the arid areas of the northern Kenya, the counties, we know high rate of evaporation and all that. So we've taken into account and in terms of integrating the development approach to address the chronic water shortages in these counties. So there are efforts actually to do dams that are actually able to, we call like 90 days reservoir, 3 months after when the drought sets in, we need to have water reservoirs that last. And through the working the multi-sector approach, we've been able to have the minimum in terms of water facilities, that like the 50 cubic meter dam will actually give that surety that the water will be sustaining the local libraries for over 3 months. The other innovation in terms of water infrastructure is solarization of boreholes. We see during drought, fuel becomes an issue when you are dealing with motorized boreholes. So there are a lot of efforts now to solarize most of the boreholes in the areas to tap the solar energy to be able to facilitate smooth access to water resources by the households. And now also the other rock catchments are being developed in the areas. We also have the sand dams that are being developed. So quite a number of water infrastructure facilities are being developed. Again, when we look at the road network that's being put in place, it comes in handy to assist the communities to cope with the drought. What it implies is that the ease of doing business is provided, because a household in Loyangalani will be able to sell his or her cow within the 1 day in Isiolo probably. So opening up infrastructure is critical. So that's one of the strategies that's happening. And when we look at the government strategy in terms of ending drought emergencies, as the government spokesman has mentioned, we cannot end drought, but we can actually end emergencies. So the framework basically highlights 4 key areas. One, in terms of pillars, is human capital. In terms of when we look at vulnerability in these counties we are dealing with, there is that vulnerability because of access to basic services, which is being addressed by the devolved functions in terms of health services, in terms of education facilities. How best do we build the capacity of our local households or communities to be able to cope in an event of drought? And then also increasing the knowledge. We are, in terms of human capital, we're looking at knowledge and skills. How do we enhance that our local communities are able to tap into climate-related information and act appropriately? That's ongoing in terms of human capital, and also looking at the basic skills in terms of livestock marketing and petty trade that will enable these households basically to cope. So in terms of, and then also human capital starts from the nutrition perspective. There are a lot of programs to support the health and nutrition in these counties, because we know if the young generation or the growing generation is malnourished, then the uptake in terms of education performance is also inhibited. So a number of partners, we are working as a PS and the spokesman has mentioned that it's a multi-sector approach. Drought risk management is a multi-sector approach, so we are working with a number of partners to address the issues. The third issue is about sustainable livelihoods. We are looking at the livelihoods and the adaptability in terms of the production. We know the climate change is real. So in terms of if the precipitation is reducing over years, and the climate information is providing that, then what adaptive mechanisms do we put in place for the local livelihoods to be able to flourish? And PS has mentioned on the dengue, for example, what kind of varieties do we promote? So we're working with the research arms to have the adaptive crop varieties, adaptive livestock in terms of the species that are adaptive to particular ecological zones. So these are the initiatives, and we have a number of partners that are supporting, and also the government supporting in partnership on this program. So we have diversification of livelihoods in terms of looking if it's livestock, diversification of breeds, which breeds are adaptive to particular zones. We have like the camel, Somali camel being promoted in other quarters. We have like the Gala goat being promoted in other quarters. The Gala goat is actually a breed of goat that is fast growing and also is a dual purpose. These are some of the strategies basically in terms of sustainable livelihoods. Natural resource management also, rangeland management. We know the land uses inhibit or affect the performance of our livelihoods, be it crop production, be it livestock production, because we are seeing increase in population and the decrease in terms of land passes available for production. So what alternatives do we provide? So the issues of small-scale farming units and also climate smart agriculture is being promoted basically to assist the local households to produce, sustain themselves through subsistence. We also have other enterprises that are coming as alternatives, like apiculture is being taken up by the households to diversify. You know, probably we may think the bee do not experience drought, but it also does. But it's at least at a manageable level, the households can be able to sustain and produce honey. The other issue is also when you look at the apiculture, we also have in other areas we have ecotourism being promoted to generate income for the local communities. Livestock, the market development. We are looking at the livestock, when we look at the sustainable livelihoods, we are looking at the entire chain, right from production to the utility point. So marketing becomes a critical part of the value chain. So marketing development and in terms of access to information, infrastructure development, a number of markets have been established in these areas, plus now establishing the structures to manage these markets. So those are some of the strategies. In terms of, I've mentioned the issue of water resource management is critical. Rangeland management is, we have a number of programs, be it conservation in situ. Conservation in situ is basically having a grazing management where the communities are able to reserve certain areas for dry season period. And and this has happened in the areas of Isiolo, Samburu, and Marsabit, where we have local conservancies where communities are able to conserve. Then we have also rehabilitation and reclaiming of the degraded rangelands, quite happening in other areas, and fodder production. The government has supported a number of groups in partnership with the development partners to produce fodder. And in fact, we started experiencing this drought in August 2021. So you can see if we have reserves, fodder reserves, it's those reserves that have actually sustained the livestock up to this far. So these are briefly and then peace and security. We have also a number of strategies in terms of forming resource use agreements and also strengthening the committees that work so that we minimize the issues of insecurity during the drought period. This basically has the issue of access and control. How do different resource user groups reach to an agreement and use the resources sustainably together. So in brief, those are some of the, we have a number of projects that are ongoing based on those key thematic areas I've highlighted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Lembara, highlighting the various long-term interventions by the government to ensure that each time there is drought, our people have the necessary resilience, the appropriate resilience to be able to be independent without relying on the government every time. Of course, I must also wish to add that these long-term are efforts that are in progress, because it takes a bit of time to be able to do all that he has mentioned. So they are work in progress. I think we are around about 40% or so in terms of completion. So this is a long-term strategy that is being rolled out, and when it is completely done, we can confidently say here that what we are experiencing now will be almost a thing of the past. There will be a few people who may require support, but the numbers would be drastically reduced. Indeed, we must also always appreciate that, like we said, the government cannot be able to stop drought from being there, but we must be able to build necessary resilience in our people so that they can be able to, by themselves, contend with the impact of drought.